Resident Evil built its legacy on zombies, jump scares, and limited inventory management, but underneath all the BOW nonsense and Umbrella conspiracy, Capcom quietly became one of gaming's most devastating architects of human tragedy. Every great villain the franchise produced was matched by someone who didn't deserve what happened to them, someone who just wanted their family back, or their city back, or a few more minutes before the virus finished what it started. The 9 entries below are the franchise's most brutal reminders that survival horror doesn't just mean surviving the monsters, it means surviving what the monsters do to the people you care about. Lisa Trevor, before Raccoon City, before Umbrella's collapse, before any of it, there was a girl named Lisa Trevor, and what happened to her is the cleanest distillation of what Oswell E. Spencer actually was. In the 1960s, Spencer commissioned George Trevor, one of the world's most gifted architects, to design the Spencer Mansion. George Trevor designed a masterpiece of hidden passages, secret rooms, and engineered isolation. Spencer thanked him for this by having him imprisoned inside the mansion he built, where he died slowly trying to find a way out. Lisa and her mother Jessica were taken as well. Jessica was used as a test subject for Spencer's viral experiments and died. Lisa somehow adapted, her body rejecting, suppressing, and absorbing every viral agent Umbrella's researchers tried on her across decades of experimentation. She stopped being a girl and became something Umbrella couldn't classify or kill, spending years wandering the estate carrying the faces of the men she'd killed, still searching for her mother. The key players in Lisa Trevor's story are Spencer, who ordered everything without remorse, and the parade of Umbrella researchers who used her as a subject rather than a person. Her parents were simply collateral damage, George's genius exploited, Jessica's biology exploited, Lisa's survival treated as a data point rather than a miracle. The lore connectivity of Lisa Trevor's existence is what makes her the emotional foundation of the entire franchise. Her journals, discovered in the Spencer Mansion during the events of the original game and its remake, recontextualize the entire setting from haunted attraction to active crime scene. She is the proof that Umbrella was not a corporation that made mistakes, it was a corporation that made choices. Her documentation of her own deterioration, her confused entries asking where her mother is, her notes about the things being done to her body. These are not horror flavor text. They are testimony. Her survival past the mansion's destruction, wandering somewhere in the European wilderness, is one of Resident Evil's few mysteries that works better unresolved. Some horrors don't deserve neat conclusions. Lisa Trevor is the one the franchise built everything on top of, and she never got out. Brad Vickers. Brad Vickers earned the nickname Chicken Heart during the Spencer Mansion incident by abandoning his STARS Alpha team at the moment they needed helicopter extraction most. He flew away. His teammates, including Jill Valentine, who would never forget it, were left to fight their way out on foot. Brad survived that night. He survived the aftermath, the cover-up, the dissolution of STRS, and the beginning of the Raccoon City outbreak in 1998. He ran every time. Then during the worst days of the outbreak, he stopped running, not because he found courage, but because the T-Virus found him first. The key players in Brad's fate are, in the original RE3, the zombie population of Raccoon City, which takes him quietly and without ceremony. In the RE3 remake, Nemesis executes him directly in front of Jill Valentine outside the Raccoon Police Department, a targeted killing that demonstrates that Umbrella sent the pursuer specifically to eliminate STARS survivors, rather than just infected civilians. Brad is the target, Jill watches. It is an efficient, merciless statement about the difference between being pursued by monsters and being hunted by a corporation. The lore connectivity of Brad Vickers is the tragedy of small cowardice, scaled up to catastrophic consequence. He wasn't a villain, he was scared. And in being scared, he left people to die. And then the thing he was scared of came back and killed him anyway. His death as a zombie, or his execution by Nemesis, functions as the franchise's statement that Raccoon City collapsed the moral distance between the survivors and the infected. Everyone who stayed too long ended the same way. Marvin Branagh. Marvin Branagh is already dying when you meet him. By the time Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield reach the Raccoon Police Department in September 1998, Officer Branagh has been barricaded himself in the department with a handful of other survivors and made the decision that he is not going to turn while there are still people he can help. He gives Leon the combat knife that becomes one of the game's essential tools. He navigates both rookies through the building's layout on willpower alone, knowing exactly what is happening to him and choosing to stay functional for as long as the virus allows. The key players in Marvin's fate are Leon and Claire, the people his last coherent hours were spent helping, and the anonymous zombie whose bite sealed his future. Marvin has no origin story, no elaborate backstory reveal. He is simply a good police officer who stayed in a city that was already lost, helped two strangers survive it, and then asked those strangers to do what needed to be done when he couldn't anymore. The lore connectivity of Marvin Branagh is that his death teaches Leon Kennedy the central lesson of his career. Survival is not the point. Service is the point. The moment Leon is forced to put down the man who saved him, who turned while Leon was still in the building, the transformation happening off screen and then suddenly, horribly, on screen, is the moment Leon Kennedy stops being a rookie and becomes a government agent. Every mission Leon takes after Raccoon City, every impossible scenario he walks into and walks out of, carries Marvin Branagh's shadow in it. Marvin's sacrifice is not remembered in monuments or mission briefing. It's remembered every time Leon takes an assignment that should kill him and doesn't flinch. That's what Marvin bought with the time he had left, and it was enough. Steve Burnside. Steve Burnside's tragedy begins before Code Veronica starts. His father was an Umbrella operative who sold classified data to rival organizations and was subsequently imprisoned on Rockford Island, along with Steve as leverage. Steve did nothing wrong. He was a teenager caught inside his father's choices, caged on an island where Umbrella conducted human experiments, watching his own father turn into a zombie and then having to kill him himself. By the time Claire Redfield crashes onto Rockford Island and finds Steve, he is already someone who has done the worst thing a child can be asked to do and carried it alone. The key players in Steve's fate are Claire, whose presence in the last weeks of his life is the closest thing to genuine warmth he ever experienced, Alexia Ashford, who uses him as a test subject for the T. Veronica virus, and Albert Wesker, who arrives at the moment Steve is dying and extracts what Umbrella needs from his deteriorating body. Wesker treats Steve's death as a logistics issue. Claire treats it as the loss of something irreplaceable. The lore connectivity of Steve Burnside is the franchise's clearest statement about the age of Umbrella's victims. He was 17, he hadn't done anything. He told Claire he loved her while he was dying, which is either the saddest sentence in Code Veronica or the saddest sentence in the whole franchise, depending on what you've played before it. His fate via T. Veronica, mutating, fighting through the mutation long enough to save the person he loved, and then dying from what it cost him, demonstrates that Umbrella's research had no floor on the acceptable age of its test subjects. It never did. Ada Wong. Ada Wong doesn't die in RE2. She falls from a catwalk after taking a bullet shielding Leon, and the game frames it as a death, and then she survives. And this pattern of apparent finality, followed by continuation, defines her entire existence in the franchise. Ada's tragedy isn't a single moment. It's the accumulation of a life where every genuine connection is permanently subordinated to the mission, where every organization that employs her eventually tries to use or discard her, and where the one relationship that means something to her, Leon Kennedy, who she saves in RE2 and again in RE4 and who saves her in return, is functionally impossible as long as she keeps making the choices she keeps making. The key players in Ada's tragic arc are Leon, who represents the life she can't have, Albert Wesker, who deployed her as an asset across multiple operations and treated her loyalty as a resource to be managed, and the rotating cast of organizations, the connections, the family, Neo Umbrella, Wesker's network that recognize her value and exploit it. In RE Village, she surfaces in Miranda's domain after being captured and experimented on, and still escapes, still survives, still refuses to become the thing being done to her. The lore connectivity of Ada Wong is that she is the franchise's mechanism for revealing its widest conspiracies. Every major organization reveals itself through its attempts to use her. She is present at the most significant events in RE lore, not because she is central to them, but because every central party wants her there as their operative. Her tragedy is that she is perpetually valuable and perpetually alone, skilled enough to survive everything Resident Evil can throw at her, and unable to survive the life she actually wants. The franchise has never given her an ending, which is maybe the point. She keeps moving, she keeps surviving, she keeps making the choices that guarantee she can never stop. Piers Nevins. Piers Nevins dies underwater, alone, and on purpose. In RE6, 2013, during the BSAA's campaign against Neo Umbrella and the C-Virus bioterror attacks across multiple continents, Piers watches his unit, the men he was responsible for, get slaughtered in Edonia. He watches Chris Redfield lose his memory from the psychological trauma of that loss, and spend months as an amnesiac drifter. He finds Chris. He spends the entire game helping Chris remember who he is, remember why the work matters, putting his captain back together while also doing his job. Then the moment comes where keeping Chris alive costs something Piers can't get back. The key players in Piers' fate are Chris Redfield, for whom Piers essentially gives up his future, and the C-Virus, which transforms his arm into a bioluminescent mutation when he injects it to survive an otherwise fatal moment. The mutation lets him fight. It also means that if he lives too long, it consumes him. Piers calculates this and acts accordingly. He uses his mutated abilities to propel Chris's escape pod out of the collapsing underwater facility, then closes the hatch between them so Chris can't come back. The lore connectivity of Piers Nevans is the franchise's most emotionally sophisticated treatment of what it costs to fight bioterrorism long term. He is not infected against his will. He makes the choice himself, with full knowledge of what it will do to him, because the mission requires it, and he is unwilling to let Chris die. His death is the franchise's argument that the soldiers who fight the monsters deserve as much of the story as the protagonists who survive. Chris Redfield continues, Piers doesn't. The underwater hatch closes and stays closed, and RE6 doesn't give you a goodbye cutscene for him. Just Chris in an escape pod and water rushing in somewhere behind him. The series never lets Chris fully recover from that, and it shouldn't. Some losses are supposed to stay with you. Baker family. The Baker family of Dulvey, Louisiana were ordinary people before 2014. Jack Baker was a stubborn, loud, protective father. Margaret was the kind of woman who keeps a household running through sheer will. Their son Lucas was difficult, and their daughter Zoe was sharp. Then they found Mia Winters and the creature called Eveline, a young-looking, mold-based bioweapon designed by the Connections to infect and control populations. Eveline wanted a family. The Bakers became it. Against every choice they had or would ever have again, the key players in the Baker family's fate are Eveline, who infected them through the mold she produces naturally, Mia Winters, whose arrival triggered the infection, and Ethan Winters, who arrives 3 years later and discovers that Jack Baker, who has been trying to kill Ethan since the game's opening, has been screaming inside his own head the entire time. The Jack Baker who throws a dinner table, who chases Ethan through a basement, who is nearly unkillable. He is also the man who, in his last lucid moment, asks Ethan to save his daughter and thanks him for coming. The lore connectivity of the Baker family is the most important tonal shift in Resident Evil history. RE7 rebuilt the franchise around first-person survival horror and made the monsters the protagonist's family, and then it made the monsters sympathetic. And Jack Baker is not a villain. He is a victim doing terrible things, while something else wears his face and uses his hands. His line, "Welcome to the family, son," recontextualizes from threat to tragedy the moment you understand what was done to him. The Bakers are the franchise's most successful argument that the real monsters are always the ones with corporate funding and a research agenda. Eveline wanted a family. She built one out of people who had one already and called that love, Donna Beneviento. Donna Beneviento does not speak. Everything she communicates in RE Village 2021 comes through Angie, the puppet she has carried since childhood, who sits in her lap and delivers her thoughts in a voice that is simultaneously Donna's and something more unhinged than Donna would allow herself to be. She was a profoundly isolated young woman with severe sociophobia before Mother Miranda selected her as a Kadu host, and the parasite that gave her the ability to induce hallucinations through airborne agents derived from her flowers did not make her less isolated. It made her domain the most psychologically disturbing location in the game, the Beneviento estate, where Ethan Winters confronts a pursuit sequence involving something that should not exist, derived from Donna's knowledge of Mia and Ethan's history. The key players in Donna's tragedy are Miranda, who weaponized her loneliness, and Angie, who is either a manifestation of Donna's fractured psyche or a genuinely separate entity that the Kadu produced. The game leaves this deliberately unresolved. When Ethan destroys Angie, Donna collapses. She dies with her puppet, which is either the franchise's most poignant moment or its most disturbing one, and possibly both simultaneously. The lore connectivity of Donna Beneviento is that she represents what Miranda's experiment did to the genuinely vulnerable. The other lords, Alcina Dimitrescu, Karl Heisenberg, Salvatore Moreau, have personalities that survived their transformation. Donna barely had a personality left to protect. She was a lonely woman who loved a doll and was turned into a bioweapon and locked in a house and told to guard a flask of what was once a child. Her section of Village is the franchise's scariest 15 minutes, precisely because there is nothing to fight, only something to endure, and something to grieve when it's over. Ethan Winters, the cruelest detail in RE Village, and possibly in the entire Resident Evil franchise, is confirmed quietly about 2/3 of the way through the game. Ethan Winters was killed in RE7. Jack Baker murdered him in the early hours of the Louisiana incident. The reason Ethan survived, the reason his hand could be reattached, the reason he kept functioning through injuries that should have been fatal across both games. The mold that Eveline produced infected him during RE7 and kept him functional the way it kept itself functional, as a biological system capable of refusing death. Ethan has been dead the entire time. He doesn't know this until RE Village tells him, and by then he's already in the middle of fighting through 4 transformed lords to recover the flask-preserved pieces of his daughter. The key players in Ethan's fate are Mia, whose past with Eveline and the connections dragged Ethan into the events of RE7, and whose abduction by Mother Miranda initiated Village, Rose Winters, the daughter he fights the entire game to save, and Miranda herself, who destroyed Ethan's family because she needed a vessel for Ava, the daughter she lost decades ago. Miranda sees Ethan as irrelevant. He is, in her framework, just an obstacle between her and her goal. The lore connectivity of Ethan Winters is the franchise's most emotionally complete arc across 2 entries. He was a civilian who went to Louisiana to find his wife, became a mold-sustained corpse who didn't know he was a corpse, had a daughter, took his family to Europe to start over, watched his family get destroyed again, and then walked into the heart of a fungal megamycete and detonated explosives to destroy it from the inside, ensuring Rose's helicopter made it out because he had run out of other options, and she was the only thing that mattered. The final credit sequence of Village plays over a girl growing up. It earns every second of it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.